Well, Mr. Bree, thank you for coming, agreeing to this. I was hoping for this to be a discussion between yourself and Mr. Troy, the other candidate. I did email you both, but you were the only one to reply. So thank you, and here we are. Look, however people, you two candidates, yourself and Mr. Troy, try to dress this role of constable up as not political. It clearly is, as the constables are the establishment's voting bloc in the States. How can you be a constable and remain non-political? You'll regularly be voting on island-wide propositions and very few parochial issues or propositions. So how can you be non-political?
I think it's more a case of, as a deputy or senator, you're voted in on your views, your manifesto very much. I think as a constable, you're there to reflect the views more of your parishioners than your own particular views or your own agendas, if you like. It's quite true saying that really the role of a constable, it is political, but to a certain extent only. As to a voting bloc of the establishment, I think you're quite right. In the past, we have seen the constables voting en bloc one way or another. Over the past year or so, we've started to see that disappear a little bit. As constable, if I'm elected, I would not take any kind of ministerial or assistant ministerial role. I would not join a political party. I am not a part of any lobby group for any industry. So I would retain my independence at all times. Politically speaking, yes, the constable is there to vote in the States. He will be voting on island-wide issues. But I think he has to vote in a manner in which it reflects the views of the parishioners as best as he knows them.
Okay, well, you've just preempted one of my questions coming up. We'll go on to this next one. I wonder if this election could be seen as a Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump election. You clearly are political. You were the deputy for 4 years, and Mr. Troy has had no political experience at all that I'm aware of. There's around a 70% voter abstention rate. The latest social survey shows that 75% of islanders don't trust the government or politicians. Could your experience as a politician go against you and Mr. Troy's lack of experience go in his favour? I suppose the question is, aren't potential voters, sick of the old political type and want something new?
I think there is going to be a certain amount of support for Mr. Troy because he is a new face, new blood, if you want to call it that. I think, however, at the moment, the majority of the electorate are going, this is a by-election. Whoever we vote in has to have the experience and knowledge to be able to deal with not only parish affairs, but also what happens in the States Assembly, i.e. the successful candidate needs to be able to hit the ground running, as the saying goes. And I think whilst, yes, there is a certain element of the electorate who will go, brilliant, a fresh face, has no political experience, that's good. I'm actually saying at the moment with what's going on, not only due to the COVID pandemic, but also what's going on in government at the moment, we have to have somebody in there with experience and knowledge to actually be able to protect the interests of the parish and its parishioners. Yes, I am a former deputy. Yes, I did stand for senator. But the reason I stood for deputy and I stood for senator and I am now standing as constable is I want to serve the parish in some way or another. I found my term as deputy very fulfilling. I helped many, many parishioners during that time, and it's something that I want to continue doing. So experience, I think, at the moment is vital.
Just on an aside from that, do you think the constables should have a vote in the States, a place in the States, by virtue of their position?
Should constables stay in the States? At the moment, I think they should. Long term, I would like to see the constables coming out of the States. and forming maybe a second house almost, or be in the States but have no vote, i.e. they can join the debates. But at the moment, with the government we've got, with the way that politics is going, I think the constables in the States are vital. What worries me is the move towards political parties in the States in the next election. We have just seen the announcement of the Jersey Alliance, I think they're calling themselves,
yes,
which is basically the government, the executive. Now, if they were to get 25 members, they've got a majority in the Assembly, they could do anything. And that's what worries me. So we need the constables to remain independent, but we need them to be a strong voice at the moment in the States. Longer term, as I said, I'd like to see the constables come out of the States. As far as the voting side goes, I still think constables, with their experience, their knowledge of the parish, have a lot to give. But in longer term, yeah, I think they should come out.
They'd be better off in the parish, parish affairs. Now, we go on to the political parties now. We've seen a rise in political parties, and one is calling itself a movement. We've got the Alliance Party, as you just said, which is pretty much the current government, who 75% of islanders don't trust, according to the latest social survey, which is right-wing, the government at the minute, and basically will give us more of the same. We've got the Progress Party, or the two Steves, who are right-wing, and will pretty much be business as usual. We have the Jersey Liberal Conservative Party, that's an oxymoron in itself, headed up by Philip Balash, who will take the island back to the 15th century, in my opinion. And last but not least, we have Reform Jersey, who are a left-wing party. Which party would you be most aligned to? And do you have any, I think you've already answered this one, do you have any intention of joining one of them?
Okay, just to reiterate, I am not going to join any political parties because I would lose my independence as constable. Which party do I have the closest alignment to? Well, if you go back to when I was a deputy, Reform were still quite in their formative years, but they had members in the States. When Reform put forward something that was sensible, well thought out, and to the benefit of the island as a whole, I would vote with them. I would argue and debate that their proposition was a good one. I'm not a Reform Party person. I disagree with some of their politics. However, I think Reform provide a balance at the moment to what's going on with government. If they come up with something that I believe to be of benefit to the island as a whole, I will vote with them. If they produce a proposition that I totally disagree with, then I will argue against it and vote against it. I am very concerned about the way in which the party politics is moving at the moment. And I mentioned the Alliance Party earlier on. Basically, that has been set up for all members of the current executive and want-to-be members of the executive, i.e. they are looking to attract candidates for the June 2022 elections. If they field enough candidates and they get enough candidates elected and they get a majority in the States, what's the point of having the other deputies there? Because they will never win. The party politics block, if you like, if it's bigger than 25 members, will control what happens. Now that frightens me because they could do away with scrutiny. They could change the laws on all sorts of things like the machinery of government law.
Where does it leave the Troy law?
The Troy rule is, I think at the moment it's 23 members of the executive only, because it's, you take the number of members, divide by half and then take one away. So I think it's about 23. But that's fine. They won't attack the Troy rule. They don't have to. If they've got a party whip and they've got 25 people who will vote that way, they can leave the Troy rule where it is.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so I suppose, did I get an answer to that question? I'm wondering which part you'd be more aligned to.
I'm not going to be aligned to any one particular party. However, I think that my political stance is much more centre towards the left than centre towards the right. I believe that everybody on this island should have a social conscience. So when things come to the States to be debated that I believe benefit people who, say, are harder up than other people, are suffering because of losing their jobs, or ways we can help them, reform will bring those type of propositions. I will support those type of propositions if they're brought. But I don't want to align myself to any one party, but I think my political stance would be centre-left slightly.
Okay, that's... I want to get on to the hustings the other night. You see, I watched the hustings. I think it was very poorly chaired, but that's my opinion. I've made a complaint to the parish hall about this, but that'll be an upcoming blog. Yeah, you seem rattled, and I've heard that there was planted questions or alleged planted questions, but I think that always goes on. I think that always happens in this sort of thing. But do I want to dwell on whether there's questions or planted questions or not? I think that's part of that just happens, unfortunately, and it shouldn't happen. But I've heard that there are some dirty tricks at play, and the parish mafia, for want of a better phrase, is lobbying against you. Can you comment on any of this?
Firstly, going to the hustings. Prior to the hustings, a meeting took place between myself, Marcus Troy and Sue Permain. Because it was a completely new format, we needed to set out some rules. One of those rules that we agreed upon was that the hustings was designed for people to put questions who had yet to make their mind up on which candidate they wished to support. So it was agreed that no questions would be taken from either the proposers or seconders of either candidate.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And if one came through, then you could challenge it.
Right.
Now, one question came through from one of my seconders, Mary Louise Backhurst, which I didn't know she was going to ask a question, because I said to everybody who supports me, I'm not doing planted questions. We've got to make it a free hustings for people to ask questions who are undecided. Mary Louise Backhurst asked a question. Marcus didn't challenge it. We then get to the end of the hustings where we're told, right, this is the last question, which we answered. And then suddenly, Sue Permain allows another question, which happens to come from a person who was a seconder of Marcus's, and was so obviously a planted question that I took the opportunity to challenge it, which we had agreed upon in the meeting could happen.
Right.
So it wasn't me sort of getting angry or going, it was, I'm sorry, I'm challenging this because that's not what we agreed, but I will answer the question anyhow.
So, because you'd already agreed this, well, surely this was down to the chair. She shouldn't have asked the question, or it should have been down to the chair to make it obvious that it was a seconder of one of the candidates.
Correct. The idea was, as I said, that no proposers or seconders questions would be allowed.
Yeah.
If the chair had decided to allow it, and there were other questions out, people wanting to ask questions right at the end, but she decided to pick this one, she should have identified the questioner as being a seconder of Marcus Troy. She failed to do that. She failed, I think, to filter out the questions, because everybody knows who each proposer and second. It's a small parish. Everybody knows who is who. So I was very upset by the way in which that was handled. I did feel that it was biased against me. However, I decided to go ahead, answer the question, but identify to everybody what was happening and who the questioner was.
I'm glad you cleared that up, because I didn't realise that was, so I'll probably add that to my complaints to the parish hall actually. And what about the rumours I've been hearing, that the so-called parish mafia are actually lobbying against you?
Yeah, I have heard the same rumours, that there is an anti-me campaign going on. We've seen evidence of it with the destruction of my posters that are up on lampposts. They're continually getting pulled down. I have made a complaint to the parish hall. The parish hall have basically said nothing they can do. I continue to put posters up, and my supporters do. They continue to get pulled down. I just think that's incredibly childish.
But is that the parish mafia doing that?
I think it is a few supporters of Marcus's who are doing it. I think, unfortunately, what happened, my personal view on it, and Marcus has said so in his speech at the hustings, he was approached and offered the role of constable.
Yeah, so who approached him?
His proposers and seconders.
Mm-hmm.
So Marcus was of the opinion that it was his as a given. He would just walk into it. And I think that's what he was told. I decided to stand a little bit later than when Marcus put his nomination form in. I was aware he put a nomination form in, and I was approached by quite a number of people going, please stand, we need to have an election.
Yeah.
Otherwise we'll have another uncontested constable in the States.
Bearing in mind 11 out of 12.
Exactly. Yeah. So I decided to stand. I think that came as a great shock to Marcus and to, as you call them, the parish mafia. And I think they have been, how can I put it, deciding their campaign is to get out to the electorate bad things about me, which are totally untrue, most of them. I have even been told by one person that they're putting it about that I've got COVID. Which, I go, sorry. But at the end of the day, it's going to be down to the electorate. I think the electorate are...
I don't like to butt in. So is it that you're seen as a threat to the status quo? With
very much.
Parish
very
mafia?
much. Because of the fact that I am, how can I put it, an independent person. I have experience. I have knowledge about how the parish works. But I am also, I think, a fairly forceful person when putting forward my own beliefs. I stand up for what I believe in. Now that people may not agree with it all the time, but I think unfortunately the candidate that the parish mafia have decided to get behind is probably a more, because of his less experience than me, probably more easy to, how can I put it, manipulate than myself. So that could be a reason. This is just a personal view. I have no evidence whatsoever that that is the case.
Yeah.
It's just having lived in the parish for a long time, most of my life, I kind of getting a feeling, but that could be wrong, but that's the feeling I'm getting.
Yeah, I think obviously, I think it probably would endear you to the non-parish mafia sort of people, so they could have done you a favour, who knows.
Mm-hmm.
So BBC Jersey has a policy of not allowing politicians who have opposing views on air at the same time. As neither yourself nor Mr. Troy are politicians yet, have you been asked by the BBC to do a head-to-head debate, or has Channel Television asked you to do a head-to-head?
BBC Radio Jersey have asked me to do one on Monday between 12 and 1 o'clock.
Head-to-head?
Head-to-head. We will be doing it via Zoom, unfortunately, because of the COVID restrictions. They can't get all of us in the studio at the same time, but they have asked whether I would participate. I'm more than willing to participate. I understand Mr. Troy is willing to participate. It was originally due to be held on Friday of last week, but Mr. Troy had to cancel because he had an extraordinary general meeting of the Hospitality Association he had to attend. So I went fine. I look forward to it.
Right, well that's good. Well, so it must be because you're not politicians that they've allowed you to go on head-to-head. And on that subject, do you think the media has some kind of responsibility for the lack of political engagement of the public? should there be more political debate in the media rather than the he said, she said, 1 minute sound bites? And we get no political debate in the media. We get they report what politicians say and do, but they never seem to get two politicians, to debate things. Do you think the media bears some responsibility for the lack of engagement?
Yeah, I think the media the media just basically, as far as I can see, put out news releases they get from the comms unit a lot of the time. Their reporting on debates in the States is, I think, very limited in putting forward political views. However, in their defence, it might be that the problem really lies with Islanders. They're totally disconnected from the political scene, really. They're fed up with it. You mentioned low voter turnout earlier on. The reason is people are fed up with the current government. They're fed up with what goes on, decisions being made, minutes not being released from meetings, i.e. forget about freedom of information. That's gone out the window. And I think people are so disconnected now from it that we're going to see a terrible turnout, voter-wise, on Wednesday.
You think so?
Absolutely terrible. Because you've got two things going. First of all, you've got this disengagement almost from the political process.
Yeah.
Well, it's three things, actually. Secondly, it's a by-election. We've got a general election next year in June. A lot of people are going, do you know what? I'll go and vote in June. I can't be bothered now, which is a shame. And thirdly, we have the situation with the COVID virus. A lot of people in the parish, particularly the elder ones, are very concerned. They might have had their double jabs, but they know that they can still contract the virus, and they're very worried about it and spread it. I am also very concerned that will deter people from coming out to vote, because postal voting is only if you're off island. Now, you can call the parish hall and ask for a adjoint to come to you to take your vote, but most of the time that's only people who are ill or bedridden. You may not be aware, but on Friday the parish went to the Royal Court to present a proposition that was instigated by myself, that the Royal Court should decide whether or not, with the current restrictions we have with COVID, with the ridiculously high active cases, over 3,000 cases in a population of 108,000, you've got nearly 13,000 direct contacts.
Yeah.
With those high figures, the presentation was, would the Royal Court consider postponing the election for, say, 2 months till September, so that more people could get vaccinated? We could try and bring the numbers down of active cases and direct contacts.
Yeah.
Because my view is it will not be a fair and equitable election in a democratic process, i.e. people are free to vote the way they want. The Royal Court, unfortunately, decided that no, the election should go ahead. But it was at my instigation that I said, look, there are a lot of people out there really concerned. If we don't do something, we're going to have, we'll be lucky, I think, if we get 15% turnout on Wednesday. But Marcus Troy was of the opinion, and that's the point of a democracy, we've got opposing opinions. He was of the opinion that no, there was no reason whatsoever it couldn't go ahead.
Very interesting. Okay, so lastly, I suppose, why should parishioners vote for you over Mr. Troy? And I would have asked Mr. Troy all these same questions had he had replied to my email and come and done this. So, yeah, why should I vote for you? Why should the parishioners vote for you over Mr. Troy?
Okay. I think there's a very clear distinction between myself and Mr. Troy. Why should people vote for me? I've got the experience. That's very important at the moment, because to be a constable, there's two sides of it. You've got to look after the parish, but you've also got to sit in the States Assembly. I also think that I am very clear that I will not become a minister or assistant minister or join a political party. Mr. Troy is not quite so clear. He did say in the hustings that he would be happy assisting a committee. Now, I was surprised at that because the committee system of government went out about 8 years ago. But it's clear indication that he would be open to being approached to be an assistant minister. That immediately ties his hands because he's a member of the executive. Also, I think there many years ago in all the parishes, the constable was always chosen as a retired businessman, a retired hotelier, a retired farmer, who probably though had been through the honorary system in one way or another. I started as a roads inspector. That's what I started doing in the parish, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But it taught me an awful lot about how the parish works and things like that. Mr. Troy has done absolutely no honorary service for the parish. Okay, he claims that he has raised a lot of money for charity. Very laudable, and I praise anybody who does that. But does that give you a automatic right to be constable just because you raise money for charity? I'm not quite so sure. And I think it does boil down to, you have two candidates, one who is experienced, has knowledge of the parish administration, and has a proven track record. Now, not everybody agrees with the way I voted as a deputy. That's fine. Not everybody liked me. That's fine. On the other side, you have a new face, new blood as people like to call it, who's got no experience either in the States or in the parish, and is purely asking for a vote because he says he's a people person. But at the end of the day, it's going to be down to the electorate. That's the great thing about the democratic process.
So I suppose what we want to do is alarming if only something like 15% of people come out. People need to come out and vote, whoever they're voting for.
Yes, definitely. I would really encourage people to come out and vote, because if they don't come out and vote, then it is likely that the chosen candidate of the parish administration will win.
Well, Mr. Bree, thank you very much for agreeing to this head-to-head.
No, thank you.
A head-to-head, and well, good luck to both candidates, for you and Mr. Troy, in the election.
Thank you very much.